Heroes. They are individuals known for completing legendary feats while representing noble virtues such as truth, justice, and honor. They have captivated the human imagination for millions of years. The story of masked heroes have been implanted in American culture, one of the first being the Lone Ranger, who represents the tales of the Wild West and folklore. However, what if I told you such a man existed? A man who wore the iconic Marshal badge and brought thousands of criminals to justice. How shocked would you be if I told you he was a black man named Bass Reeves, who was the first black federal marshal past the Mississippi River? Before Oklahoma became a state, it was reserved for the Indian territories of the civilized tribes that were forced to resettle there by Andrew Jackson and stayed loyal to the Union during the Civil War. This area became a refuge for fugitives since a loophole did not allow regular government forces to enter the territory, and the native governments were not allowed to arrest non-tribal members for committing crimes. Due to this problem, in 1875, President Ulysses S. Grant authorized Judge Isaac C. Parker to hire up to 200 federal marshals to bring the criminals to justice. They never filled this order, as they could usually only hire up to 30 at a time and were outnumbered 300 to 1 when it came to fugitives. Reeves and his fellow marshals were stationed at Fort Smith, which was located between the border of the Indian Territories and Arkansas. The jurisdiction of this base was responsible for 75,000 square miles. It was known as one of the most dangerous jurisdictions because of the large smuggling rings and infamous criminals that led to a death count of more than 120 federal marshals. Reeves' reputation as a runaway slave from Texas, who gained a lot of renown in the Native Union Army for his marksmanship with a rifle and pistol, allowed him to be one of the first marshals hired by Parker. During this time period, Bass Reeves learned 5 different native languages that he would use to communicate with tribes while he was on his missions. Standing at 6'2" and 180 pounds, he was one of the most feared marshals within the territory and was known always to catch his man. Despite being illiterate, he was able to memorize all his warrants and writs and never captured the wrong person out of all of his 3,000 arrests. Even after 30 years of service and countless attempts on his life, he never once was shot or wounded. Belle Starr, one of the most infamous outlaws in American history, due to her association with a younger gang, turned herself in at Fort Smith once she heard that Bass Reeves received her warrant, and she refused to be on the run from him. Although Bass Reeves had a menacing reputation, he held a gentle disposition. Since he was a deacon at his church in Van Buren, Arkansas, he preached the gospel to his captors on the trail back to Fort Smith. The highest kill count recorded on Reeves was around 20, since he always tried to bring his captives back alive. However, Bass Reeves himself claims that he only killed 14 in self-defense. In one instance, one of his targets refused to go back with him and approached him with a Winchester rifle, stating that he was going to go down fighting and die in the house that he built. However, Bass Reeves simply answered saying, "The law teaches me not to kill, but to bring back my captives." After a couple of hours, Bass Reeves was able to detain the fugitive without a single bullet being fired. His commitment to not killing his targets led him to study non-lethal strategies as a way to approach others. He would only ride with one posse man as it was required when going into Indian Territory. Other than that, he usually did his missions alone. Furthermore, he would always have different ways to disguise himself when approaching his targets. In one instance, he shot 2 holes in his hat and messed up his clothes so he could look like a runaway fugitive and hide with 2 other of his targets. And in the middle of the night, he handcuffed them and woke them up in the morning and took them back to Fort Smith. In his line of work, some of the cases can become personal. One of them was when he had to arrest one of the ministers at his church for smuggling whiskey into Native American tribes after it was outlawed. He even had to arrest his own son, Benny Reeves, for murdering his wife when he caught her cheating. The judge tried to give the warrant to another marshal since he didn't believe that Reeves could handle it and it would be unfair to the man to have him arrest his own son. But Reeves was adamant and said, "No one else should get hurt for my son's mistakes. Let me do it." No one knew what happened when Reeves found his son, but all we know is that he brought his son back and he served 10 years before he was released for good behavior. After 32 years of service from the federal marshals, Oklahoma became a state in 1907 and was no longer considered an Indian territory. This put the responsibility of protection on the United States government. Therefore, the federal marshals were no longer needed. This prompted Bass Reeves to retire at the age of 67, making him the only marshal on record to stay with the marshals from the founding to its disbandment. However, his career was not yet over. He later ran a police officer beat without a single crime reported, and then died in Muskogee, Oklahoma at the age of 71. Even though there's no official connection between Reeves and the Lone Ranger, this story and similarities are quite uncanny. He still should be celebrated for his service and career that protected many and saved many lives, and even was able to surpass a fictional hero. I chose to do research on Bass Reeves because stories like these break the preconceived notion that the Western frontier was shaped by white men only. Stories of the Buffalo Soldiers, a black Western military corps, and Black Wall Street, which was located in Tulsa, Oklahoma, inspired me to look for more heroes that were lost to history. My sources for this project included the National Park Service's website for Fort Smith, Arkansas. The novels I used were Legends and Lies, The Real West by Bill O'Reilly, and Black Gun, Silver Star, The Life and Legend of Frontier Marshal Bass Reeves by Art T. Burton. The audio used in this presentation comes from My Hero Academia and includes songs such as Plus Ultra, My Hero Academia, and You Say Run. I would also like to thank my audience and fellow students for enjoying my presentation and taking the time to listen to the story of Bass Reeves. I sincerely hope that this inspires you to look up more stories about African Americans in the West and learn how they contributed to the American culture and history. And don't forget that you also can do incredible things, and history won't forget you.